Is anyone else kind of a different person depending on who you're with? Or maybe you're mostly the same, but you hide things depending on who you're with? And don't even get me started on hiding the topics that just need to be avoided when the family's together for the holidays. This spiritual journey that I've been on has me avoiding and hiding a whole side of myself. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Soulful Wonderings, the space where we search for meaning in everyday life and honor the lessons that help us grow. I'm Heather and I'm your host. Before we get started, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. That really helps us out. And you can also head over to our socials and follow us there. And I will be putting all of that in the show notes. So at the time that this episode will be airing, it's actually just a couple days until Christmas. And we've been talking a lot about the stresses that the holidays can bring, because I know for a lot of us, it's a lot, right? And even though a lot of what we've discussed in the recent episodes it's been pretty straightforward stuff. And I think it's things I would deem normal issues that many people have. Many of these have also been part of my healing journey, part of my spiritual journey. Some of them have been part of deep dives into releasing and healing and just a lot of things that I've done to work on myself and my growth. But here's what's a little crazy. I'm not sure how much I share that besides here on this podcast and with certain people. But in general, I feel like a lot of my conversations are on a surface level, I guess is the best way to say it. And I kind of only get in depth if the person I'm talking to is open to it. So obviously there are people that I know in kind of what I'm going to call a spiritual circle, spiritual world, that obviously I feel more comfortable with them because I know that we're all in a similar space and probably similar feelings about things. But everyday life, not so much. Everyday folks I interact with, yeah, not so much. It's just not a place that I'm overly comfortable. For me, it's kind of like politics or religion for most people. You know, how they're kind of, tiptoeing around topics or gauging how people react. Well, I'm over here gauging how they're going to be open to spiritual things. I'm in my head, thumbing through index cards in my brain, figuring out what terminology can I use, what terminology should I use, what will they understand, what will they tolerate. Okay, let me explain that one. I'm going to be honest with you. When the word tolerate first came to my mind, it felt, harsh? I don't know. It kind of stopped me for a second. Because tolerate feels, just feels serious. But I think tolerate really works here because when you start to discuss things that are possibly in opposition to the other person's beliefs, tolerate fits. Okay, so ask Mr. Google, and the definition of tolerate is to allow the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. See what I mean? I'm telling you, spirituality and or religion is often right up there with those big controversial topics. There are strong beliefs one way or the other, and often you will find the person on the other side. This isn't always, okay, so hear me, this isn't a judgment. People on the other side can be very closed off to hearing other points of view, or kind of anything that doesn't exactly align with their beliefs. It is such an unfortunate breakdown in communication when this happens too. But I think, like other topics, we may actually be much closer on what we believe than we think. But discovering that is going to require actual communication. So that means actual listening, actual speaking. Both of those have to be done with kindness and love and setting judgment aside. Okay, now hear me when I say this. Many of these people come from a place that is well seated into their bodies, into their psyches. And you know what I mean. There is deep conditioning to consider. And often, so many times, there is a deep pain or maybe a past trauma that has to be overcome. That's not to mention straight up fear, whether it's founded or unfounded, and that's really irrelevant. It's there. So even people that have good intentions, okay? You've got some of these people that they have the best of intentions. They don't mean to be that way. They probably don't even realize they are being that way. But it is so deep seated that when you even start, they panic because they think even association with it is going to make them guilty, right? And you know what I'm talking about. You say something and then, you kind of watch their face to see what their reaction was. And that's how a lot of us go into situations, especially with our families, that we're watching for that, because then we're going to decide, are we going to continue, or if we've started something, are we going to stop? How are we going to proceed? Again, because there's probably a lot of strong feelings coming from both sides. And I know that for me and probably for many others, this isn't just at the holidays, right? The holidays are just kind of where we are. And that's often where we're perhaps expected to be somewhere. And even more than that, we're expected to participate. We feel an obligation to do so. And we have to decide which part of us is going to show up. And even further, which part of us we're going to allow to be seen or heard. I kind of experienced this in particular when I was dealing with those seizure-like episodes. We've talked about those before, but I was having these, they were kind of like a seizure, but we couldn't figure out what they were. And of course, I have a very caring family who they want to know how I am. And of course, they knew I was going to doctors and we were trying to figure this out. And it was really affecting my daily life. So, of course, something they knew about and they were concerned about. So then I find out that I'm a portal and that we kind of have control of it now. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? They don't know what that means. What do you mean you're a portal? Oh my gosh. Then there's a whole backstory of explanation that you've got to do to even catch them up to what that is. Most of which they may or may not believe in. They may or may not balk at right away because they're going to go, this is not Christian and I can't have anything to do with this. That's besides if they're not looking at you like you have 3 heads. So how am I supposed to look at them and say, well, you see what happened is we figured out that I'm a portal and that I'm running energy. And I mean, seriously, there's days that I'm not even sure I completely get it. And then I'm supposed to go explain this to people who have no idea what this means or where to even start. Now, mind you, some of them may kind of take an interest and want to learn. And even if they don't understand it, they would listen and be willing to learn and be willing to support and all those things. Others, however, would absolutely freak out. And let's be honest, they would never treat you the same again. Let's be honest about it. They wouldn't. I had another time, I had a coworker and a friend, good friend, who passed away. It's actually been a couple of years now. And there was speculation about what happened. And of course, it was very sudden and very unexpected. And so there was just a lot of communication because we were all reeling from this. And of course, I had communicated with her pretty much right away. So I knew what happened. There were a lot of things I knew because of that. But it didn't really feel appropriate to bring that up in the official managers meeting where part of this discussion was happening. And I've never been able to figure out how to really broach that subject with coworkers. Because as much as they want to know, and as much as I truly believe it might bring them comfort, they're not gonna believe me, y'all. They're gonna, again, this is not Christian. I don't want to hear it. Is one of the fastest things or first things that's going to be said or that's going to happen. So what do you do with that? How do you, most of the time I just kind of sit there silently because I don't know what to say, or I try to find ways to interject and share, no, I know she's fine. It was probably this kind of thing that caused her death or whatever, to try to put it out there, but in a way that they can accept it. Because the reality of what I know, I'm not sure they can accept it, or that they can, tolerate it, right? And now, granted, these are some of the bigger quote unquote things, but there are other times when I'm in a conversation that becomes what I'm going to call a coaching moment. Basically, I recognize something that we could work on that, especially with theta, or do some healing around it, and I find myself starting out just really basic. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of giving them some basic advice that might help them, kind of easing them in, if you will. If they start to show more interest, then I might go a little bit further. Otherwise, I'm just a friend giving them advice, and I'm trying to be mindful of how and what advice I give them. Now I am becoming more comfortable with being open about what I say, but I still temper myself, and I wonder if I always will. I still gauge, right? I find myself redirecting my language, or sometimes I'm just full on pulling back and not saying anything. And I hate that one. I hate that there are times that I don't push through, but there's times when, the old saying, pick your battles, and there's times when I just know that this is not going to happen. Just back up, try another time, maybe, but, or that mind is never going to be changed, or at least not this day. So you just kind of move on and pick the battle. Now, there are some that would say that's not being authentic, and they're probably right. There are some that would say that that's showing respect. They can also be right. I truly get both sides. I don't want to not be myself simply for the comfort of others. That's not fair to me. But I don't want to be antagonistic either. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes when you are just openly spouting all these spiritual words and terms and doing all these things, and you, especially if it makes someone uncomfortable, or it's a sore subject with someone, or they're going to take issue with it or whatever, in a way you're provoking them. And so that's what I mean by the respect thing. If you know that they just really hate this, then you could tone it down a little bit and show some respect to their beliefs as well. There's got to be a middle ground and a common ground. But I think one of the questions is, how do we hold both truths at the same time? Being us, but being respectful as well. One place I've focused is on listening to my intuition more. If I get a nudge to say something, I'm trying to listen and do it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if I'm not really sure what the end result is going to be, even if in the past that hasn't gone well. I try to trust God in the universe that they're not going to steer me wrong, and that they're going to give me the proper words. Sometimes it's the words and how you use them that are very important. And so what that looks like for me right now is, like I said, let me listen to what I'm being nudged to do. Let me say something and let me be mindful of how I'm saying it. Because again, respect can include being mindful of others and their feelings while still saying what you need to say. Maybe we need to visit tolerance versus belonging for a minute. What comes to mind is I don't need everyone to agree with me. I need to be allowed to exist. And that is so true. You know, sometimes the topics we're discussing, they're going to be hugely controversial. We all know this. But I have a few thoughts that may help us with our mindset as we go into our family gatherings. Some phrases that we could even use to help us speak, right? Let's call these bridge phrases. They're non-provoking, but they're still true. One you might consider just to let someone know where you're coming from. You know what, this part of my life is really meaningful to me. Make sure you're conveying that this has meaning to you and this is important to you. You could try, we see it differently. And you know what? I care more about us than winning this. And maybe it's just time to talk about something else at that point. Another one is happy to talk more one-on-one if you're curious. Give them that opportunity to come to you and really hear what you have to say and what your opinions are and what it is that is important to you, that is meaningful to you. And if they do come to you, I think that's a huge step forward. And then offer them that same courtesy. And hear me, for all of those, you need to mean it. Okay, because let's be real, we can say these things, but we can still hold a huge amount of anger and animosity. And the reality is this simply won't work if you continue that mindset. So say these things, but I really believe that you have to be at a point where you can let go of the anger as you do that. Another idea is the 5% rule. What does that mean? Basically, radical honesty can backfire at holiday tables, but 5% truer is more doable. So being 5% more you, that's a small percentage. That's moving the needle, but it's not so much that you're, blowing up the holiday table. A few thoughts to consider. Maybe pick just one of these. What if you swapped one word? So you went from just vibes to saying it as my spiritual practice is. See how the difference is? Offer one sentence, then stop. For instance, for me, intuition is how I pray. That is very much explaining what you're thinking and putting it kind of in terms that other people might understand a little better, right? And one more. What if you claim one boundary? What if you say, you know what, I'm skipping that topic today, but I'm here to help with the dishes. And that way you just kind of skirt it, but still keep it nice and respectful and cordial. You know what I mean? Sometimes in all this though, you need an exit line. You need a way out of it, right? Things that keep it calm, keep you intact. For example, you could say, I'm not up for that debate today, but I love you. You see how you could then kind of move the conversation a different direction or something? So that may be a way to just kind of, look, I'm really not up for this, but make sure they understand that I still love you, that you're including that kindness, that can go a long way in breaking down barriers, animosity, kind of angry debates that maybe happen. Next, what if you say, let's save that for another time. I want to enjoy being together. So again, it's something that you're not putting them off. You're not saying, no, I don't care. But it's, hey, we're together for the holidays. Let's enjoy that. Maybe another time we can meet one-on-one and I could hear your side, right? And one last one, and this is a big one, don't be afraid to do. You know what? I'm going to step outside for a minute and I'll be right back. And just go and take a breath. Let yourself ground. Let yourself feel the earth. You know what I'm saying? Go literally ground and take a deep breath and let go of, maybe whatever energy is really affecting you at that moment. It's sometimes just what you need to do to just get a little distance between you and wherever that like I said, that negative energy is coming from. Look, at the end of the day, many of us, I would wager most of us, we put on a mask of some kind throughout our lives. We take it down for some, we let it slip, whether on purpose or by accident. And the reasons for that can be vast, and we won't get into that today. I would also wager that it's more about our own protection than anything else, right? Fear of judgment, retribution, comments, looks, uncomfortable moments, and truthfully loss. Because if that mask slips too much, will we lose the other person? Some would say that if we do, they aren't meant to be in our lives. And that is true. That is true. But what is also true is that it's still a loss, and that would still hurt, and that could, in some instances, change your life drastically, and not necessarily in a way that you want it to be changed. Especially when we're talking about family and close friends. Okay, before we finish up, I want to be really blunt about this. We're talking about this at what is a bit of a surface level right now. And kind of some ideas of how to deal with your holidays in particular. Okay, ways to help you hopefully make your holiday more enjoyable if you've got a difficult situation that you may be going into. But some of these issues are difficult conversations, and they are challenges that are going to go well beyond the holidays. And as much as these ideas can help you, please don't avoid the deeper healing that may be needed in your life. If you've got triggers and projections and conditioning and all the other words that we talk about a lot, those are feelings that are important and they can't be dismissed, and they're probably still going to be underlying, even as you maybe use some of these techniques or tools to navigate your day. At some point, you really do need to come back and visit the whys and the real reasons. And if you really want to move past it and be able to have true connections and truly good holidays and all those things, to deal with the underlying issues. But for now, let's consider this, let's call it a holiday metric as you go into the day with your family. At the end of that day, ask yourself this: was I kind? And was I a little more me? And be okay with that being enough, because you know what? It is. So I would like to leave you with this thought today as we go into this holiday season. As we finish out this holiday season, I guess. One, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, whatever it is that you celebrate. I hope it is full of joy and love and laughter and kindness. And my final thought: may you feel safe in your own skin. May you choose one 5% truer sentence. And may the people who love you meet you there.